Welcome to Real Talk Fantasy Baseball. I am Will Power, your host. Joined with me today is John Murrow, not a Dodgers fan, obviously, as his tagline says, and Javi the Commish. How you guys doing today?
Good, man. Appreciate you inviting me back.
Yeah, it's always fun to have a friendly face on the show. Javi, did we lose you? You still there?
Doing good,
There he is.
bro.
All right, sweet. All right, so today's show, we are talking about Elly De La Cruz. Can Elly De La Cruz be stopped? Struggling hitters and pitching standouts, all coming up on Real Talk Fantasy Baseball. If it comes to the point where I see Matt Olson there, and I know that Bryce Harper and Pete Alonso are still waiting in the wings, like maybe a round or two later, I think I'm passing on Matt Olson.
Carrying home run after home run after home run. I was like, holy crap, like it's the old Altuve, you know?
I'm going after guys like Austin Riley that's going to hit close to 40 home runs with a decent batting average.
It has nothing to do with the luxury tax or any of that stuff, dude. It's just the owners want to bring a champion to a team. They're going to do whatever it takes.
All right, so if you guys haven't noticed yet, we actually just upgraded our account where we record from. So we are recording in 1080p right now. So I do have to make a new intro for our fantasy show soon, especially because, you know, all the talk during the intro was all about like drafting and stuff like that. Now we got to get into, you know, close to mid-season stuff. But before we do anything else, today's episode is sponsored by Rival Fantasy, your all-in-one sports fantasy platform. Make sure to check out rivalfantasy.com or download the Rival Fantasy app using code RealTalkBaseball. Fantasy baseball is what our show is all about, and Rival Fantasy's unique sports betting platform includes best ball, fantasy bingo, daily and weekly drafts, and daily challenges. When you use the code RealTalkBaseball, Rival Fantasy will match your first deposit up to $200. And before you sign up for Rival Fantasy, make sure that it is legal in your state. So, unfortunately, it is not available in Pennsylvania, which is why I can't really get any of my homies to sign up. But if you are listening to the show, or if you're watching this show, if you don't live in Pennsylvania, I think there's only like 5 states where it's not sanctioned yet. So, anywhere else, you should be fine. And also, before we start, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. We appreciate that. We are almost at 700 subscribers on YouTube, and we're really excited about that. We're trying to hit 1,000 before the end of the season. So tell your family, tell your friends. Really easy. Just hit that subscribe button. And if you scan the QR code in the top right corner, it will take you to all of our social media. So please follow us everywhere that we are available. All right. Let's get this show started, guys. All right. So, first guy that we got to talk about is one of the most dynamic players in baseball in 2024. You know, there was so much hype about Elly De La Cruz last season. And, you know, he started off really hot last season. We thought that we were getting the real deal, just like Julio Rodriguez the season before, you know. But he tailed off a little bit towards the middle of the season and towards the end, striking out a lot. But this year, he has been on a tear, dude. John, what you thinking about Elly De La Cruz?
I'm kind of surprised, obviously pleasantly surprised. It's a guy that I wish I had in my fantasy lineup, but Javi has him, of course. But Ellie's electric, man. I mean, he is just so much fun to watch. And it's just one of those where I guess I'll say I'm pleasantly surprised that he's keeping up the pace that he had last year to start. Now, the big thing is, can he keep it up for the whole year? You know, so ultimately he's on pace, you know, right now to keep it going and beat what he was doing this time last year. Now, the second half of last season, that's the Elly De La Cruz you do not want to see. But so far, let's just break down a couple of his numbers here real quick. Here's what he's doing better than he did last year: exit velocity, launch angle, barrel percentage, hard hit percentage, sweet spot percentage. I can go on, and things that he's improved on or have gone down on, I should say. His K percentage is down, his walk rate's up. So every category that matters as a baseball player, he's improved on from last year. You know, this guy throws 100 miles an hour from shortstop. He's 6'5". He's fast. He's electric, and he's a guy that is just so much fun to watch. And there's a reason that the Reds are off to their best start at 14-10 since 2006. You know, so I would say electric isn't even the best word for Elly De La Cruz. You know, he's only going to get better.
All right, Javi, since we already spilled the beans that he is on your fantasy lineup in our league, let's get your take on Elly De La Cruz.
I'm on the same boat as John. I was really excited about him last year. I got him on a trade with you for Zach Gallen, and at first, I was really hype about it, because he was tearing it up, and then towards the end of the season, he kind of had a dropout. He was his batting average dipped. He wasn't really doing the things that he was doing earlier in the season. And they pretty much figured him out. So I was really hesitant to keep him in your keeper league. But he's young, man. I just figured, he's gonna right the wrongs, and he's clearly done that. He's doing absolutely everything. He's hitting for average. He's hitting for strength with 7 home runs. He's got 15 stolen bases, man. That's crazy. I think this week alone, he had 2 games where he had 3 stolen bases. 2 of those games. Man, he's a very exciting player. I love that he's on the Reds. The Reds are an exciting young team. They have a lot of injuries right now. Hopefully, you get a couple guys coming back like McLean and whatnot. Frankie Montas just got hurt. He's on the IL. I think it's crazy how good this team could be. Once everybody's healthy, and if Elly De La Cruz can keep up this torrid pace, bro, like, how old is he? He's 20,
22.
23, 22, right? Holy crap. Yeah.
Uh-oh.
So it's very exciting. If I lived in Cincinnati, I'm very excited to have my fantasy lineup.
Yeah, it's not just Cincinnati. I mean, it's not just Elly De La Cruz. Like, Cincinnati is full of hot young talent, man. And all right, so 2 positive reviews on Elly De La Cruz. I think I'm gonna be a little bit of a negative Nancy over here. Now, I really do like Elly De La Cruz. I
Always.
like him always, man. I got to. I gotta dig just a little bit, All right, so check this out. League average ground ball percentage is 44.6%. Elly De La Cruz, 58.7%. That means that 6 of every 10 batted balls that Elly De La Cruz has is on the ground. Now, a lot of times, like, his batting average is great, 306 right now, and with a ground ball percentage of 60%, like, that's crazy, right? But it's because he hits the ball so freaking hard that it's finding holes through the infield. Either he's hitting it past defenders that just don't have the reaction time to be able to get to it, or he's just finding holes. But if you look at his expected batting average, it's at 245. And that's actually where I expect Elly De La Cruz to be hitting, kind of like long term. I don't think that he's going to be anything better than like a 250 hitter, but he does have a lot of power, and he does have a lot of speed. And the speed that he has, you can always bank on. He's got some young, very long, very athletic legs, and you can always depend on him. He as long as he's healthy, he'll probably give you 50 to 60 stolen bases in any given season, at least for now, until he gets a little bit older. But the home runs, I feel like he hits a lot of line drives and not really too many balls up in the air. It's like every single one of his home runs that we see, it's crazy, like 460 feet, 480 feet, close to 500. And that's great. But that's also going to come with that 260 batting average. So I feel like the batting average that we see right now, it's so misleading. everything about Elly De La Cruz says that he should be hitting about 40 home runs and stealing 80 bases. Like you said, John, the walks are up 6% from last year. He's hitting the ball slightly harder than he did last year. But, like I was saying, you get to his batted ball profile and the perception changes a little bit. I already mentioned the ground ball percentage. Now, the fly ball percentage, league average is 23.5%. Elly De La Cruz is sitting at a 17.4%. He's not hitting the ball in the air enough to be able to hit 40 home runs. He definitely has the power for that, but he's not getting the ball elevated enough. Line drive percentage, league average is 24.8. Elly De La Cruz, not so bad. It's at 21.7. So that I can live with. But the low fly ball rate, and the extremely high ground ball rate, it scares me, man. And I'm going to say this now, and I said it last year too. Sell Elly De La Cruz now. Sell high. You can get an amazing starting pitcher for him, just like I got Zach Gallen last year, who was, a top 10 pitcher in the league last season. He's in a dynasty league and in a keeper categories league. Elly De La Cruz, his value is extremely high. He's probably top 10, in dynasty, but in a points league, in a redraft league, I don't know if Elly De La Cruz really can retain that value throughout the season. The strikeouts are they're going to be out of control. He's at a 30.6% strikeout rate. The walk rate is really good, but it's also really cold in Cincinnati right now. So a lot of the pitchers don't really have the grip on the ball that they would in the summertime. And a lot of these balls that would normally be strikes, because the pitcher can't hold on to the ball that much or that good, they're not in the strike zone as much as they would be, in the future, in the coming months, and this year has been really cold all across the country, man. It's like you can even look at states like California that don't really have a lot of cold fronts, but they've been sitting 50s and 60s for a few months. They've been getting a lot of rain, and that brings down the temperature a lot also. So these pitchers, once the weather starts warming up, I feel like they're gonna pitch a little bit better. And the bats might get a little bit better too, because baseball's a summer sport, and that's usually when hitters thrive. But the 30.6% strikeout rate and the ground ball rate, that's what sticks out to me a little bit too much. And I'm going to say, sell Elly De La Cruz now. If you can get, any other position that you really need, if it's a need for you, whether it's, a starting pitcher or a position player, it really wouldn't matter to me. I feel like you can get almost any player that you want, and anyone that's not in the top 10 right now for Elly De La Cruz, and someone's going to buy into it. Throw some offers out there. You might be able to get like Garrett Cole, that's coming back from injury, really, really soon. That's starting pitcher, or like a struggling hitter, like probably not Freddie Freeman. I don't think anyone would give up on Freddie Freeman, but you know what? Send it out there anyway. I would, in a heartbeat, sell Elly De La Cruz if I could get Freddie Freeman back instead. Maybe not in the categories league, because Elly De La Cruz is going to score a lot of runs. He's going to get a lot of stolen bases, and that is extremely valuable in itself. But I did sell Elly De La Cruz in a categories league for Pete Alonso, and it's mainly just because I don't really buy into the power that he's been showing lately. I feel like the ground ball percentage and the strikeouts are just going to catch up to him eventually. Any thoughts on what I just said, John? We'll start with you.
I'll piggyback off that a little bit. I mean, I think it's ultimately one of those where, would you rather, if you plan to keep Elly De La Cruz for years, then I'm more willing to give up a top tier pitcher in a trade for that. I think we talked about, his ground ball percentage is high, but I think that's something that can be easily fixed in the off season. You can fix launch angle. It's not something you want to work on mid season, because then it's like the home run derby. It just puts you completely out of your groove. If it's not broken, don't fix it now. But I think that's something, he's 22 years old. So the power is going to continue to come, and he's strong as a bull. So Could I trade like a Garrett Cole this season to get Elly De La Cruz for this season? Sure. I'd be all right with that. I don't know, who I would necessarily trade up. I'm not sure I would really give up like I don't think I'd give up like a Glasnow for him, honestly. So it depends, but I do like his potential this year, but I like it more long term than anything.
I think a Tyler Glasnow for Elly De La Cruz, that would be an awesome trade for both sides, because both sides come with risk and both sides come with it's high risk, high reward, and Tyler Glasnow is one of the best pitchers in the league when he's healthy. So is he going to stay healthy all year? Hopefully, but who knows? And with Elly De La Cruz, because he's so young, is this hot streak? Like there's a lot of players out there. Jose Altuve comes to mind, that outperform their expected stats. His expected batting average is always 260, 265, maybe 270, but he's always batting over 300 every single season. And that's because he pulls the ball so much, and when you pull the ball, it hits the line, it leaves the yard, especially because he's a right-handed bat, and that hitting it into the Crawford boxes is relatively easy for him, even though he's only 4'11". But the complete opposite from Elly De La Cruz, right? You got 6'5", and then on the opposite side, you got 5'6" with Jose Altuve. But yeah, I mean that's basically all I gotta say about Elly De La Cruz. Javi, any feedback on what I just said? Is he frozen? All right. Javi might be frozen right now. Hopefully we can get him back soon. All right. So that was Elly De La Cruz. All right. Now we got to talk about some struggling hitters. So, John, why don't you go ahead and start with your struggling hitter that you chose?
I'm going to kick it off. I'm going to kick it off with Nolan Jones. Nolan Jones is a guy that I was watching, especially in our league where I was able to snag a couple keepers from other rosters. And Nolan Jones was one of those guys that I thought about snagging. He had a monstrous season last year, and we'll get there. But I guess this year it's tough to pick. It's like you said, it's cold across the entire Northeast, across the entire country for that matter. So we're not seeing guys like Seager, Bichette, a lot of these guys who are studs do what they're doing. But Nolan Jones is still young. He was a second-round pick in 2016. He's actually from Langhorne, PA, Will, if you didn't know that, not too far from us. But he's young still. He had a pretty mediocre spring training. He batted 250, 5 doubles, 22 strikeouts, and 58 plate appearances. So it's not bad. It's not great. But he was coming off a season last year where, on the Rockies, he was the lone bright spot, I'll really say, batting 297, 931 OPS, 20 homers, 22 doubles, 20 stolen bases, 62 RBIs, all this in just 106 games. So he's 25. He's an outfielder, with first base eligibility. We'll see what they continue to do with Chris Bryant as he continues to waste away. And for Nolan Jones this year, I think he still has potential, but to start the season batting 148, 1 home run, 219 on base percentage, and a 250 slugging percentage, that's drop worthy. That's a guy that you don't know how long you can really hold on to a guy like that. And it's worthy of trying to, if he's available as a waiver wire pickup and you have a bench spot, maybe, but as of right now, I don't see him as an elite baseball player long term. I think he has the ability to be a good player for a good long time. But, the biggest concern right now this season is 38 strikeouts to just 8 walks in only 24 games. But, it's that 148 batting average. You got to get on base. And if with 1 home run, in Coors Field, you got to hit. And if you're not hitting in Coors Field, then you might just not be that good of a baseball player.
Yeah. I mean, you said it, man. It's like Coors Field and Great American Ballpark in Cincinnati are the two ballparks that if you're not hitting good in either one of those ballparks, like you said, man, maybe you're just not that good in general. All right. So Nolan Jones, dude, he was surrounded by so much hype going into 2024 because of his 2023 numbers. So much so that he was getting drafted around guys like Manny Machado, Max Fried, Mike Trout, middle of the 4th round. And that 4th round pick has just not paid dividends yet. You know, I feel like it's so hard to drop a guy that you drafted in the earlier rounds like that, you know, and like, who are you going to get on the waiver wire that could come close to anything that Nolan Jones provides upside? His batted ball profile looks similar to last year, other than a 5% dip in his line drive rate, but I don't even think that's the problem. The problem is his ability to put the bat on the ball. 37% K rate. A lot of swings and misses on every type of pitch he sees, especially the off-speed pitch. Only 12 hits through 22 games, as I did my notes a few days ago. You know, I don't know what he's done in the last couple days since I ended up. We had an expansion draft in our keeper league, and he actually got taken from my roster, which maybe that's a good thing for my team this year. I mean, who knows, right?
You probably weren't too mad about that.
No, I'm not now. All right. So league average zone contact rate is 82%, while Jones is sitting at a 75.7, 7% lower than league average. You know, it's not terrible, but he's just not squaring up on the ball like he did last season, man. Like you said, the barrel percentage, you know, in 2023 for Nolan Jones was at 15.7%. This year is at 4.9. It makes me think, I wonder if something's wrong with maybe his eyes. Like, I know there was another player, I think it was Tommy Pham maybe, that had to get like a correction surgery on his eyes because he just couldn't see the ball. It was like a blur. So, you know, it's possible, or maybe there's just you know, an injury that we didn't know about. Actually, he is day-to-day right now, that they were saying that he had upper back stiffness, lower back stiffness, something like that. So maybe it's a back issue, you know, and we've seen from a lot of hitters that have back issues. Christian Yelich comes to mind, that, you know, you need your back to be strong to be able to be a good hitter, you know. For such a drastic change like this, I feel like there has to be an explanation, you know. At the time I wrote this, I said I wouldn't be surprised if the Rockies come out and say he's been dealing with an injury or something of that nature. And then all of a sudden they come out and say he's dealing with a back injury. So
Back injury could make a lot of sense, though, because you think about it. You know, I've got back issues of my own. I'm on the wrong side of 30 here, so I'm just looking over his stats here now, and I mean his launch angle has gone down drastically. You know, from 22 to 23, it went down 6%. It's down another 0.2 from last year. But if you look at his entire numbers all across the board, exit velocity down, barreling percentage way down. It's down 11.9%. So he's just not barreling up the ball. And if you're not barreling up the ball, you're not going to get any power, let alone any hits.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what ballpark you're in. If you're not barreling up the ball, you're not doing anything. Unless you have Elly De La Cruz speed, you know, then a swinging bunt is a base hit.
Yeah. Yeah. You got to get on base.
All right. So I think in the future, if you do have that bench spot, hang on to Nolan Jones. Don't drop him unless you absolutely have to, unless you really get desperate, because when he turns it on, if he turns it on, he is great. You know, he's going to hit a lot of home runs. You know, the ballpark is definitely the reason for that. But if I had a bench spot, I would definitely keep Nolan Jones, especially in a categories league where you can kind of afford to have a bunch of hitters on the bench. In a points league, that's rough, man. That's really rough. I think I would still want to keep him on my bench anyway. You know, there's not really a lot of pitchers out there on the waiver wire anyway to be just like dropping bench hitters and picking up a pitcher. So I would try to hang on to him as long as I could, maybe till like middle of May, you know, and then by middle of May, if he's still not hitting, then I would seriously consider dropping. But for now, I think I'd rather hold. And it's mainly because I see the upside and I don't want to waste a 4th round pick and then end up dropping him 3 weeks into the season.
Would you trade him right now if he was on your roster?
It depends on like, I wouldn't offer anyone anything, you know, because I feel like I wouldn't be able to get anything big in return. And I feel like someone else that does want Nolan Jones, if they are willing to offer something that I see as value that would contribute to my lineup, then I would consider a trade, but it would have to be something that meets my needs in my lineup, not just like a random like Martin Perez, like we saw a trade in our league earlier, Martin Perez for someone, I don't remember who it was, but
The
that got
slot
vetoed
trade.
super quick.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
That was
So
for
it
like
looks like we
Eovaldi.
have Javi back just in audio. Javi, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right. All right. So we just got done with Nolan Jones. How about you go ahead and give your struggling hitter?
Alrighty then. My guy is the one that everybody was talking about 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, Jackson Holliday. Man, what a way to start your career in the bigs. 2 for 34 since his call up, 18 strikeouts, .059 batting average in 34 at bats. This is obviously not what everybody expected. He was tearing it up in the minors, putting up numbers, stealing bases, hitting for average, all the things, that he has known to do, and the reason why they called him up and the reason why he was the number one pick. He- you know, it it's crazy, to think like all the hype around this kid. He's 20 years old. Um, I'm a little worried about him, but I don't think the Orioles called him up just to send him back down to the minors. I think in a way it's kind of good for a young player to kind of go through these struggles early in his career, because it just kind of gives him a reason to work out, some things. Obviously he knows that there's some things in his in his mechanics or whatever that it's not clicking. Um and he said, that he's trying, this is like an adjustment period for him. He's trying to, figure things out. For a 20-year-old to come up and have these big expectations is a lot of pressure. That could be another reason why, he's kind of struggling. He I think he had a hit against the Angels a couple days ago.
Mhm.
It was his second hit. You know, maybe he's kind of getting a little adjusted to the stuff. Um, uh, I can't really say much. They're sitting him down against lefties, obviously, because he can't hit against lefties. Baltimore also called up Heston. I forget. I don't know how to pronounce his name. I don't want to butcher it.
Here's
But
his
yeah. So there's another guy right there that they could plug in, and if they need to sit Holiday out for if he's struggling, that they got this. They just got a bunch of pieces that can move around, right? I wouldn't be too worried about him. I think if you have somebody that you can plug in for Holiday right now, it would be a great idea, especially against left-handed pitchers. Um, he's really hard to trust right now, man. I think once he starts, I think we talked about this last episode. He's known he's a fast kid, right? He can steal bases. He can't show us that because he's not getting on base. So, I think once he starts figuring it out, once he starts getting on base, he needs to learn how to take walks, man. Like he needs to work the count, because 18 strikeouts, that's a lot of strikeouts, man. And he doesn't play every day. So to me, 18 strikeouts is a lot. Um, but if he could just kind of work through those things and at least get on base and at least work the count, get a couple walks in here, it shows what you can do on the bases. You know, I think once all these things kind of like work themselves out, and he kind of puts in a couple games together where he's getting on base and stuff, I think he can definitely right the ship. Like I said, I don't think Baltimore is going to take him back down to the minors, because obviously they invested a lot of time in this kid, and this is like one of their like jewels, for the Orioles. So if you have somebody on your bench that you can plug in for Holiday, or if you can pick somebody else up for him on days that he's not hitting, even on days that he's hitting, I would do that. Um, But yeah, it sucks, man, because everybody was really hype about it, and I think Will, you called it that you were gonna get a lot of hate on it, but you hit it right on the money, bro.
Yeah, this is kind of what I was talking about before the season even started. That there were 3 Jacksons that were coming up as rookies, 3 20-year-old Jacksons. That was Jackson Holliday, Jackson Chourio, who we're going to talk about next, and Jackson Merrill from the Padres. And I was so big on Jackson Merrill, and he is actually the only one of those 3 Jacksons that's actually doing something. Now, my little 2-piece on Jackson Holliday, I feel like the only reason to keep Jackson Holliday on your roster right now is if you're in a 14-team league or deeper, or you're in a keeper league. Otherwise, if you're in a 12-team league or less, if you haven't dropped him yet, I think now is the time. In 30 at bats, Jackson Holliday had 1 hit. He didn't get his second hit until just a few days ago, like you mentioned, Javi. And that hit was a hard hit ground ball through the right side of the infield. But dude, he's batting .033. That is terrible. And this is kind of like shades of John, you gotta feel some of this. Mickey Moniak. Mickey Moniak was a first-round pick,
Yeah.
came up into the league, and he was just terrible. Sorry. Need some water. I live in Pennsylvania. I gotta say water. Sorry about that. Jackson Holliday has so much potential, man. But are we going to see another Joe Waddell? Are we going to see another Mickey Moniak? Are we going to see another first-round pick just kind of like go to waste? Jordan Walker from the Cardinals that just got sent back down to the minors for the second time in the past couple years. Sometimes first-round picks pan out and sometimes they don't. And I'm willing to bet that Jackson Holliday is going to pan out. I think he will be great. I just don't think that 2024 is the year. I think that I saw an interview with him and he said that he was not nervous at all. Like, bro, I see the nervousness in your game,
Mm-hmm.
His average exit velocity is 87 miles an hour. He's not hitting the ball very hard. Max exit velocity 101. When you got guys hitting 110 almost on a daily basis, launch angles at a 4.3%. This dude has a 50% K rate. Half of his at bats are strikeouts. 16 Ks through 30 at bats. Only the 6.3 walk percentage. It's actually not so bad, but that's only 2 walks. Within the limited amount of time that he's had so far. I love the sprint speed. Sprint speed is 88th percentile, but he's not getting on base, so we can't see any stolen bases if you're not going to get on base. The ground ball percentage is 57.1%. We were talking about Elly De La Cruz earlier, who's actually hitting home runs and he's walking a lot, 14% based on ball rate. But this dude is hitting the ball on the ground 60% of the time, and he's not walking. His fly ball percentage is 28.6%, so that's actually pretty decent. And line drive rate is 14.3%. That's way too low, man. So he's either hitting ground balls or fly balls, and a lot of times those fly balls could be pop-ups. A pop-up in the infield is just as bad as a strikeout. It does nothing for anyone unless, it's one of those like errors where the ball just drops in the infield because the infield doesn't know how to communicate with each other. But this dude is whiffing like crazy, man. I just don't think that 2024 is the year for him. I think that he needs some seasoning in AAA. Before he got his call up in AAA, he was batting .333 with a .482 on base percentage. That's more than 100 points. That's 150 points higher than his batting average. He was walking a shitload, man. 1,077 OPS. How did this guy come from AAA hitting that, and then now in the majors, he's the worst. He is the single worst position player in baseball right now. In Major League Baseball.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, it has not translated very well into the majors, and I wouldn't go as far to say that he's overrated because I like Jackson Holliday. I don't like him for 2024. And I said that multiple times, even before his call up in Baltimore. I just don't think he's ready. I didn't see it
No.
in the minors. I was looking at his numbers while he was in the minor leagues, and it wasn't enough for me, man. It wasn't enough.
So I'll actually argue here a little bit. I'm kind of glad I'm going last here. I'm a huge Jackson Holliday guy, which shouldn't be surprised because he was a 1-1 top prospect in baseball. But the Orioles aren't calling this guy up until they really thought he was ready. Is he off to the best start? Obviously not. But I'm not going to tell you that he's going to be great this season, but can he be good and serviceable to have in your lineup? I think absolutely. We can't expect this guy to hit 300 from day one with, 25 homers, 80 RBIs. That's just not realistic for a 20-year-old. So if you lower and tamper those expectations this year, to have this guy in a keeper league for years and years is, that's really where, then we can talk about you're not dropping this guy, probably not. But if you can hold on to him this year, tough it out a little bit. And I think it's only a matter of time, honestly, where, again, tamper expectations. Don't expect him to hit, over 300. But if you say, all right, as a second base shortstop eligibility guy, this guy can hit 275. I'd be pretty stoked with 275 in that lineup, score a ton of runs, get some stolen bases. I think it's only a matter of time until he turns it around. Again, this guy's 20 years old. And if you look up, the prospects that have been called up in Baltimore over the past couple of years, Adley Rutschman comes onto the scene, shines. Gunnar Henderson comes onto the scene, shines. Jordan Westburg, Colton Cowser. So this guy had huge expectations coming in. He's 20 years old. He's a 1-1. I mean, there's a lot on his shoulders. And I think for Jackson, I think he's just kind of got to stay to his game. He's just trying to do too much right now.
Yeah.
And I think that explains a lot of the strikeouts too. Strikeouts come
You could
from
see
guys
it in
that
his
aren't
swing.
Yeah.
He's late on everything. He's like at least like a half a second late, and when majority of the league is able to throw 100 miles an hour, you can't be late like that, and I'm looking at his 2023 minor league stats, and among 4 different levels in the minor leagues, he played 125 games. He had 12 home runs, 24 stolen bases in 125 games. I don't know what he did in high school. I didn't go that far back, but I can't tell you why he was drafted number 1 overall, but looking at his minor league numbers, I don't see it. I don't see that he was worth a number 1 overall pick. I would see him more as like maybe a 3rd round pick, not even in the 1st round. In the real MLB draft, not in fantasy drafts, I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I get it. He has a lot of hype because his dad was a monster. His dad was huge.
Yeah.
Jackson Holliday is 6 foot nothing, 185 pounds. Now he is only 20 years old, but guys stop growing earlier. Around 18 years old, 20 years old, he's not really growing anymore. The only thing that's growing on him is his strikeouts. Like he's a lefty bat, so that should play well in Baltimore, but he hasn't been able to put the bat on the ball. So I don't know, man. Maybe the minor leagues, because these guys don't throw 100 miles an hour. Maybe that's the reason why he was excelling so much in AAA. I don't know, man. I think that only the future is going to tell for Jackson Holliday. And I still see a bright future for Jackson Holliday. I just don't think that he is worthy of a number 1 overall pick in the draft a couple years ago.
You really had to go the Mickey Moniak route?
Hey, I had to, man. You got the Phillies hat on. It reminded me. I had to.
Yeah.
All right, guys. We got Nolan Jones off the books. We got Jackson Holliday off the books. And now we got to start talking about my pick, and that is Jackson Chourio. Now, Jackson Chourio is not doing as bad as Jackson Holliday, but for a number 2 overall prospect in the Brewers organization, he's kind of stinking it up a little bit. So as of now, he's batting .225 with a .282 on base percentage. .690 OPS. That's 4 home runs through 10 games, 4 stolen bases, 6 walks to 24 strikeouts. 24 strikeouts, dude. That's a lot.
That's a lot. Yeah.
His expected batting average, you would assume that it would be better than his actual batting average because he bats in Milwaukee, right? Wrong. His expected batting average is 208. That's just above the Mendoza line. That sucks. You know what his average exit velocity is? 85.2 miles per hour. That is in the bottom 10% of the league. That is terrible. Max exit velocity is actually looking a little bit better, 108.6%, 108.6 miles per hour. So he does have some power. You know, we saw that when he was in the minor leagues, but just like Jackson Holliday and just like Elly De La Cruz, the launch angle, it's got to get up, man. You got to start hitting the ball in the air a little bit more. Not too in the air like Jackson Holliday's, the pop-ups, but you know, his launch angle's at 9.1%. That's a little bit lower than what I want to see a guy hitting in Milwaukee. I want to see 12% launch angle, and you're going to be able to see 25 home runs from Jackson Chourio. Walk percentage isn't too bad, 7.7%, but his K rate, 30.8%. If you're not going to hit me at least 25 home runs, 30 home runs, 30% K rate is just too much. I need some more contact. And if you are going to chase out of the zone, at least make some contact and foul those pitches off or put it in play. So that way, at least if there's a runner on first, he can have a chance to maybe make it to second base. The power speed combo is definitely a recipe for success, but not when you're batting 225. You can't steal bases if you're not even making it to first. Hard hit percentage is below league average at 35.4%. His exit velocity is below average. Launch angle is below average. His K percentage is way above average. Walks is below average. The upside is real. He had 22 home runs and 44 stolen bases with a 282 batting average in 2023 in the minors. But unfortunately, that has not translated to the majors yet. Eventually, I think Chourio could be a top 10 outfielder, you know, but everything kind of points to him not being ready. I kind of feel the same way about Jackson Chourio that I did about Jackson Holliday. I feel a little bit stronger about Jackson Holliday than I do Jackson Chourio. I feel like Jackson Chourio actually has the ability to turn things around and be an asset later on. And he's not bad enough yet to really drop from lineups. He's just not what everyone expected. And I don't know if there's another minor league stint. You know, I don't think it would actually be beneficial for him because the Brewers are not really known to develop their players that well anyway. I think he would actually do better from learning from guys like Christian Yelich, who shares the outfield from him, you know, and other vets that are on the team, Rhys Hoskins, you know. Rhys Hoskins is a great hitter, a terrible defender, but a really good hitter that got some pop in his bat. And if Jackson Chourio is the type of hitter that wants to hit 30 home runs in a season, you can learn a lot from Rhys Hoskins. You know, he spent a lot of time in Philly and hit a lot of home runs with a Philly jersey on. So I think the future looks bright for Jackson Chourio, but maybe we really won't see that come to fruition until 2025. John, I think you got something to say, man. Go ahead and say it.
I was going to say, I'm about the same on Jackson Chourio.
Oh, we actually agree.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's got a lot of potential. You know, is he going to hit his full potential this year? Absolutely not. But again, 20 years old, you know, a lot of pressure. Just signed, what, an 8-year contract extension. He's coming in to be the savior in Milwaukee.
Before he even stepped on an MLB field. That is crazy to me, man.
Yeah, that's a lot of pressure.
They were trying to do what the Braves did with Acuna and just lock him in super early. And it's too early to see if that panned out yet. Sorry to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, you're good. I mean, I think the Braves or the Brewers did the right move there, honestly. I mean, I think you do some of those contracts and some of them pan out, some of them don't. You know, Scott Kingery, for example, Phillies tried to do that. Scott Kingery signed like a 6-year, $44 million contract, and I was running down the streets in excitement, and he's been in AAA since AA actually for a little bit too. But no, going back to Chourio, I mean, I think the big thing for him, his stats aren't his outside of batting average, his stats aren't bad. 4 homers, 13 RBIs, and 80 at bats this year isn't bad for a
And 4
20-year-old.
stolen bases.
And 4 stolen bases, but the 213 batting average is hurting him. But we know this guy can hit. He hit 283 last season in the minors, 22 homers, like you said. If you care about Venezuelan Winter League offseason stats, he hit 379. So it's just a matter of him getting a more consistent average. If this guy can give me 260 this year, I'd be pretty happy. Can he get there? Who knows? But I mean, this is a guy that I'm not giving up on either. I think I don't want to give him, there was some comps to Acuna, again, outside of the contract, but just a balanced player that can hit for average, hit for power. He's got speed, great fielder, but we got to remember he's 20 years old. So you got to take everything with a grain of salt here.
See, and the good thing also about Jackson Chourio is the Brewers, they traded away their best pitcher. So they are in rebuild mode. If they weren't in rebuild mode, there's no way that they would have let Corbin Burns end up going to Baltimore, but it just seems to me that they are looking for young talent, and Christian Yelich, the way that he's been playing, man, I wouldn't be surprised if he got traded later on too. Maybe not this season, possibly next season before the deadline, because he got a pretty decent contract from Milwaukee also. He's going to be there for a little bit, but I wouldn't be surprised if another team that was in the hunt for the World Series and they needed an outfielder would go after a guy like Christian Yelich, and the Brewers, knowing to be sellers, selling Corbin Burns away. I don't think they're done. That it's weird that they ended up signing Brandon Woodruff for a 2-year deal, knowing that he had Tommy John surgery, he wasn't going to be able to pitch at all this season. That was really weird to me, man. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they're not in rebuild mode. I don't know. It just seemed like a weird thing to let go of your best starting pitcher, but then you re-sign your number 2, knowing that he's not going to be able to pitch at all in 2024. Are you looking forward to 2025? Like, is that the plan? I don't know. Corbin Burns, I believe he was going to be a free agent after this season. So that makes sense that they would trade him away. But I don't know. It's a little weird.
The Brewers are just the Red Sox of the National League, if we're being honest. They don't really have a plan. I'll call it a soft rebuild because you're trading away a guy like Corbin Burns and then signing Rhys Hoskins. It's like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
So, you got to go all in one way or another, and they're just kind of right in the middle. The Red Sox, not to go off too much of a tangent here on a Red Sox tangent, but it's the same thing where they're just they have these young guys that are coming up. They don't know what or where to spend their money, and they're just I think they'll also be sellers at the deadline too. So it's the same thing.
That was another thing that was weird for me, man. They spent all this money on Rhys Hoskins when there's other first basemen that would be fine for 2024, knowing that the Brewers aren't really going to do much in the Central. It's possible still, but you gave up your best pitcher. So why are we re-signing Woodruff, who's not going to pitch this year, and why are you spending 20-something million on Rhys Hoskins when Yuli Gurriel was available for $8 million, like $15 million less than what you spent on Rhys Hoskins? It's wild to me, man. Like, should have capitalized on selling Willy Adames, I think, last year. Now Willy Adames, like, his value is just so low that I don't think anyone's really going to want him. But I don't know. I'm not in the Brewers front office, so I can't answer those type of questions, man. All right, so that was my struggling hitter. Again, I'd say you don't necessarily have to drop right now because you see the potential. You see the 108 mile an hour max exit velocity. I think that he'll turn it on. Maybe it's just the same thing that we were talking about with like you said, the Northeast, where it's just been a little bit cold lately, and when the weather starts warming up, maybe that's when we'll see a little ignition from Jackson Chourio. All right, Javi. John went first last time with the struggling hitter, so let's go ahead and get your pitching standout.
All right. My pitching standout. I actually scooped this guy up in I think it was in your league. Jared Jones from the Pirates. This guy literally came out of nowhere. I'm sure John knows more about this guy than I do because he's a prospect guy. But I'm also the type of dude that kind of looks at the early prospects and to see, who's they're gonna bring up. I kind of look at their stats a little bit. So this guy he's more for me like under the radar because nobody was really talking about him. Everybody was talking about Jackson Holliday and Chourio and these guys that are coming up. Um, this dude is 2-2 right now with a 2.79 ERA, 39 strikeouts to 4 walks. That is awesome. Uh, 29 innings pitch. He only has 9 earned runs. So he started 5 games so far. And out of these 5 games, 4 of them were against teams that are currently above 500. So he pitched against Baltimore, he pitched against the Phillies, he pitched against the Mets, and he pitched against the Brewers. So this guy hasn't had like an easy schedule per se, right? His first start against the Marlins, he had 10 strikeouts. I was like, whoa. But it's the Marlins. So, we're like, okay, any pitcher can probably get something like that, right? So then he goes and he plays Baltimore, gets 7 strikeouts against Baltimore. He goes against the Phillies, he gets 8 strikeouts against the Phillies, 7 against the Mets, and 7 against the Brewers. Now all these teams, right now they're playing pretty good ball, and for a young pitcher to come in and do what he's doing is to me is amazing because like I said, he wasn't one of those guys that everybody was really talking about. You didn't really hear anything about. At least I didn't. John, you could probably correct me on that. But yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say my comp for Jared Jones, he kind of reminds me a little bit of Matt Harvey, kind of a guy that was still a top pitcher in the organization, but just didn't get the same amount of clout, if you will. He's
Yeah,
Jared Jones,
yeah.
Pirates #3 prospect, and it was just pretty quiet. You hear,
Mhm.
all right, this guy's got an electric fastball, but you don't hear about his other stuff. And, you know, he's relying right now on that fastball a lot. 49%
Yeah,
of the time he's throwing that, but it's a 97-mile-an-hour heater and he's spotting it. So
yeah,
between that, he's got a nasty slider and he's using that 40% of the time. 38.4% chase percentage, 41.5% whiff percentage. I mean, this is a guy that I was staring at, and you scooped him up before I did. And I don't know. I really
dude.
didn't, after seeing Pittsburgh in the second half last year, I just didn't trust that he was going to get the run support. And,
Yeah. So
sometimes if you're that good, it doesn't matter.
yeah, that's kind of where I was at because I looked I looked at who how you look ahead of the schedule and you try to see who's going to start games and stuff like that, and a lot of these times teams don't know, they have a to be determined tag on their starter, so you don't know, so you do your research and you're like, oh shoot, like this guy's coming up. Yeah, let me scoop them up. Let's see what you get, right? And man, it's crazy. The Pirates have had a lot of young pitchers come up in their organization. You know, Glass now. He was there with Jameson Tyone. Um,
Eric Cole.
Garrett Cole was there. It's like they draft these guys and they don't do much with them, and it's they pan out on other teams. But right now with Jared Jones, it looks like he is that guy right now, man. And their whole pitching rotation is actually pitching pretty good. I don't know if he can keep it up. He's gonna have obviously some off days, but the fact that he's pitching against these top level teams, these offensive lineups, that are hitting the ball really well, it's amazing to me because like we just said, he wasn't really out there, like a Jackson Holiday or a Jackson Chourio. He wasn't a name, that everybody knew about. So I'm really glad I scooped him up. And yeah, I mean the Pirates, they're actually playing pretty good ball right now. But again, they started the same way last season. They were the talk of the town, and then they just kind of regressed later on. So we'll see. We'll see where Jared Jones is. I'm gonna say like mid-season, see where he's at. But man, his numbers look freaking great right now, dude.
Yeah, I was going to chime in and just say, is that 2.79 ERA sustainable? Probably not, but he is 22 years old, so there's not a whole lot of footage on him. I could
Hmm.
see him having a 3.5 ERA, which, I'd still be really happy with that. And the other beautiful thing that I like about Jared Jones a lot is
Yeah.
that, you hear so much about Paul Skeens and everything else, and this guy doesn't have that
Hmm.
rookie pressure that a guy like Paul Skeens does as their actual top prospect. This guy's gone under the radar for that reason.
Yeah.
He doesn't need to be the number one in the rotation long term. So
Yeah.
Speaking of Paul
He's not.
Skeens,
He's not letting. He's not letting that. He's not letting that. That whole Paul Skeens hype like mess with his game. Like
yeah,
so
that's what everybody's talking about.
speaking of Paul Skeens, he's also had 5 starts so far and just allowed his first earned run in 5
That's
starts
crazy.
in AAA, of course. So Skeens is coming, but Jared Jones is the topic of conversation right now. And all right, so if we go back to 2023, Jones was not impressive in AAA, man. 4.72 ERA in 15 starts. He had a 4-5 record, a 135 whip in 82 innings pitched. Gave up 9 home runs, 34 walks to 99 strikeouts. So 99 strikeouts and 82 innings pitched. That gives me hope for some upside, right? I think the single most important thing about pitchers in fantasy baseball, especially in points leagues, is bat missing ability. And Jared Jones, so far this season, he's been one of the best, man. Check this out. Let's see, 93 percentile in K percentage, 99th percentile in whiff percentage, 97th percentile in chase rate. So that's 3 categories right there in batters against that are striking out, whiffing on everything, and chasing on his breaking pitches that are outside of the zone. That is what you want to see from a stud pitcher, man. And this guy is a freaking stud, you know? Dude has a 49.3% whiff rate on his slider. He does give up a lot of hard contact, so his bat missing ability might not be able to save him in the future, in certain circumstances. Just like you guys said, like the ERA is not sustainable. He's more of like a 3.5 ERA guy, which might actually happen sooner than later, because of all that hard contact he's allowing. But enjoy those strikeouts for now, man. And know that even if he does give up a lot of hard contact, at least he's not giving up free passes, as he's only given up 4 walks in 5 starts so far.
That's crazy. Yep.
well,
Yeah, I'm hyped
crazy.
about Jared Jones, man.
Especially a young pitcher like that, man, to
Mhm.
not give up that many walks, like that's awesome.
Ice in
Dude,
his veins.
he's pitching against like big dudes, man. Like
Primetime
freaking Bryce
players.
Harper, right?
Mhm.
Pete Alonso, Yelich, Rushman, that Baltimore lineup, like they're hitting bombs, man. And this guy, he just is just not phasing them. And dude, there's times that he has a matchup, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, man, do I sit him down because you don't want to get the negative points,
He's facing
you
the
know?
Dodgers or something.
Yeah, bro. And now it's like, dude, I'll just plug him in to see what he can do against these teams. I mean, if he has a bad game, he has a bad game, but you know what he's capable of. You know what I mean?
Exactly. All right, John. Let's go with your pitching standout pick. And of course, it's definitely going to be
Ranger Suarez. You gotta slow me down here if I talk too much, but I am so excited to talk about Ranger Suarez.
I bet you are.
This guy does not get the love that he deserves. I mean, Ranger Suarez, he's been around. He's been around since 2018, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And when he first came on the scene, 5.40 ERA, didn't get another start until 2021. Produced an 8-5 record with a 1.36 ERA in 12 games started. That's all he did, So he's been quietly under the radar here for a couple of years. So I'll kind of use a comp. It's an aggressive comp, but he reminds me a bit of Tom Glavine in that Braves rotation in the 90s. You got Greg.
That's pretty bold right there, man.
It's an aggressive comp, but look at the numbers. I mean, the numbers don't lie. So if you can consider Wheeler and Nola as Maddox Smoltz, Glavine's your number 3. Rangers just quietly been doing his thing too. So I saw a quote from Greg Maddux actually speaking of the other day, and it reminded me exactly of what Ranger Suarez does. And the quote went verbatim, if you will. If I wasn't pitching well, I wasn't trying to throw harder. I was trying to locate better. And if you watch Ranger Suarez pitch, he's not throwing high 90s. He's throwing low to mid 90s, but he's placing the ball. He's switching it up, change up, fastball. He got a nice curveball. Like he mixes it up, and that's what a pitcher does versus a thrower. So a guy to continue to watch. I'm not going to say he's going to continue to keep up that 1.36 ERA or what he's currently got rocking now, but this is a guy that could and probably should have a sub 3.25 ERA. I'll give you. So again, not having the pressure of being the number one guy in a rotation. Another huge thing that I love is that he's going up against other teams, number 3. He's got the Phillies rotation behind him. So I love Ranger. I could go on, and I'll come back to it. But what do you guys think about Ranger?
So Ranger Suarez has been elite before. We've seen him be elite. In 2021, he had a 1.36 ERA in 106 innings pitched, 107 strikeouts to 33 walks. But out of the 106 of those innings, Suarez made 12 starts and 27 appearances out of the bullpen. So, and then you look at every other year that he's played. Every other year has told a different story. Since becoming a full-time starter in 2022, Suarez ended his 2022 campaign with a 3.65 ERA. That's 29 starts. That's good. It's not great, but he followed that by a very mediocre year in 2023. Last year was not good for him. But like we mentioned earlier in the show, batting averages were up, ERA were up league-wide, last season.
Just a little hurt.
Is, can we trust Ranger or is he fooling us? So last season, Suarez threw his fastball 21.5% of the time, and opponents had a 304 batting average against. This season, it looks like he's smartened up a little bit as he's lowered his fastball percentage down to 16.9%. That's a 5% decrease. It seems as though that might have actually done the trick because this season, opponents have a batting average against of 118. Now, that's compared to 304 last season. And when you're not throwing 100 plus, pitch mix is everything, just like you said, John. Sinker usage is up 6.6%. The curveball remains around 19%. Changeup and cutter are only down about 1%. And his slider is rarely used at all. So that really doesn't really matter. But all in all, fastball usage percentage dropped. I think that seemed to be the key to success for Ranger Suarez. And I don't know if that's a thing that he had just been working on or if the Phillies worked on it with him in the offseason or whatever it did. But it seems like it kind of fixed whatever was wrong with Ranger before. And he's becoming, like you said, he's not the type of guy that just flamethrow and throw a guy, 99 miles an hour, 100 miles an hour. He is a pitcher. He throws his pitches where he wants them to go, and he fools the batters. I don't think he's fooling us. I think that this is the real Ranger Suarez. Like you said, I don't think he's a sub-2 ERA guy, but I think that he could possibly be a sub-3 ERA guy, high 290s. Probably not, but I think it's highly possible. I think that the changes that Ranger Suarez has made in his game, his pitch mix, have just done crazy things for him. And I think that the Phillies fans and baseball in general is going to be very happy with what he's doing in baseball this season. I think he'll probably end the season close to a 3 ERA, maybe a little bit lower, maybe a little bit higher, about a strikeout per inning. He's not a big strikeout guy, but that's okay because you have a solid infield behind you. All those guys, Bohm has gotten so much better defensively, so all those ground balls that he's inducing, you got Harper over there digging out, balls that are thrown in the dirt like he's been doing this for 20 years. So much better defensively than Rhys Hoskins ever was at first base.
That's
and
crazy.
That actually says a lot. That says a lot for a guy that's only been playing first base for about a year and a half now.
Yep.
And he's the second best athlete on the team behind Real Muto.
I think that Suarez, in my opinion, has been the more consistent pitcher even with Nola there and Wheeler. I know those are the guys that that's who is the top guys, and they've been pitching really good. But Suarez, dude, he's just been very consistent with everything that he's doing. I think he's ranked number 5 in fantasy overall as a pitcher. He's ranked number 5, which is just crazy because you wouldn't think that he'd be up there, right? Like fantasy, statistically. But I feel like he has like with everything that he's done with his pitching and then the adjustments that he's made, I think he's been the more consistent guy out of the Phillies rotation. And that's dude, to have a 1-2-3 punch like that for the Phillies and their offense, that's great, man. And it looks like they're putting it together, you know.
Yeah.
Are there any arguments against the Phillies having the best rotation in baseball?
Well,
that back end kind of worries me a little bit.
I don't like Turnbull and I don't like Taiwan Walker, but I do like the 1-2-3 punch now that they have with Ranger Suarez.
A lot of guys. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. A lot of guys at work, dude, they're very high on Turnbull, and I'm like, dude, he was with the Tigers. I didn't see that with the Tigers. It's kind of like when Lorenzen came up, right? He came from the Tigers too, and first game he pitched, freaking no hitter, right? And then he just took a dip. And like with Turnbull, don't get me wrong, like his last 2 starts have been great, but I just don't long term. I don't know, man. I'm kind of iffy on Turnbull.
So as the show's representative Phil's fan, my take on Turnbull, I don't love Turnbull, but I think he has the potential to be a top 5 number 4 pitcher in baseball, and that's really all you can ask out of him. I think if we're going to talk about Taiwan Walker stealing a spot here shortly, but I think he's going to have the ability to get it back. But, Turnbull's, we can get on a whole tangent on Turnbull, but he's looked pretty good.
Solid.
You don't need. Yeah,
he's had spots of greatness, but I see Taiwan Walker as like a 3.75 ERA guy. I see Spencer Turnbull as like a 4.20 ERA guy. I don't think that he really has much upside. I think he's been in the league long enough where we know what type of pitcher he is.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe because he spent all his time in Detroit, now that he has different coaches that are, leading him into a different direction, maybe that might help. But dude, he was pitching one of the best ballparks for pitchers, and he still had a 4 ERA almost every season. So now pitching in a hitter's ballpark, I don't know, man. I'd much rather see him in the bullpen where he only has to rely on 2 of his best pitches, rather than having a complete arsenal as a starting pitcher. I just don't trust him as a starting pitcher. Kind of like there was another guy. He was rookie of the year a few years ago, a pitcher for Detroit. Michael starts with an F. He won
Fulmer.
Michael Fulmer. Right,
Yeah.
he's in the bullpen now, and he's doing actually pretty good in the bullpen. I think that was a smart move, and I think the Spencer Turnbull actually can do something like that too, and maybe even be like a bulk inning eater. Maybe if Nola gets into trouble, and
Yarborough.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Or like Josh Hader used to be before he became the closer of the Brewers when Devin Williams was the closer. Josh Hader was doing like the 7th and 9th, and he took over the job as the closer, and then now he's one of the best closers in the game. But before that, he was thriving out of the bullpen pitching the 7th and the 8th, and I feel like every team kind of needs that guy that can go a couple innings when they need to, because we've seen multiple high-end starting pitchers that can't get out of the 5th inning. And when they can't get out of the 5th inning, what are you going to do? Throw someone to finish off the 5th, and then someone to finish the 6th, and then the 7th, and then the 8th, and then the 9th. You're going to waste 5 arms in your bullpen when you still have 2 more games in the series against the same team. I'd much rather have a guy that can go 2 or 3 innings for the team, especially if we're in a deficit. If we're losing, You want a guy to go out there and at least shut him down, so that way it gives your offense a little bit of a chance to make a comeback, like we saw with the Reds last night. Sorry, John. Hey,
Yeah.
I,
That was some bad bullpen.
I didn't watch the game, but I saw the highlights in the morning, and I was like, oh, man, everyone at work is so down today.
I had a buddy that had a 7-leg parlay and hit 6 of 7, missed on the fills.
Wow.
Oh,
Sorry, Alex.
ouch.
Sorry, Alex.
That sucks. All right, guys. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to really go over my pitching standout because we are already at 1 hour and 10 minutes. But I will mention that it was Tanner Houck. And I see Tanner Houck as a streamer in the future. I don't really see him as like a mainstay in anyone's lineup. For now, I'd say, ride him, but
ride the hot hand.
Ride the hot hand, but he is a ground ball pitcher. He throws he induces the ball on the ground 52.1% of the time. That's about 8% above league average. And with the Red Sox behind him, Devers, his defense has gotten better. He has a 94.2% fielding percentage, which is not really the best. It's better than it was before, but if the guys behind you aren't fielding 98% or better, it's really hard to have a ground ball pitcher, like Dallas Keuchel when he was with the Astros and he had Correa and Altuve and Bregman behind him. Great. You can have an amazing ground ball pitcher like that. But then you see on the flip side, like Kyle Hendricks, back when the Cubs won the World Series a few years ago, they had Bryant and Baez and Rizzo in the infield. Now it's like the Cubs infield isn't doing so great. So I don't really trust Kyle Hendricks, as much as I used to a few years ago. Kind of the same thing with Tanner Houck. Like the Red Sox don't really have the best defenders. A few years ago, that would have been a different story because they had Dustin Pedroia, they had Xander Bogaerts, they had some really good, solid defenders. But now I think that it's just going to catch up to him. The ground balls are going to catch up to him, and he's not the highest strikeout pitcher, 26.7% K rate. The walks are down, so that's good. So he does limit the damage like that. But, eventually I think base hits are going to be plentiful for Tanner Houck in the future. Oh, and I forgot to change the name. Sorry, guys.
If I owned Tanner Houck as a fantasy baseball owner, I would try to sell him yesterday. Take advantage of this value. This guy had a 5.01 ERA last year and a career 3.6 ERA. Not bad. He's off to such a hot start this year. So you say about riding the hot hand, but also take advantage of that trade value if you can. He's on a Red Sox team that if they decide to keep him on the Red Sox, but he could be a trade candidate, but I just don't trust him.
There's not really a lot of star power in the Red Sox lineup for like run support anyway. It's like you got Devers and that's it. There's not really much else to be excited about. Justin Turner's gone.
Well, they got
everyone's
Tristan,
hurt,
and he just got hurt.
Everyone's hurt.
Yeah,
dude.
Although I'm excited about Vaughn Grissom.
It's crazy.
Yeah, for the future, right? That's actually a pretty solid defender. So once he starts playing every day, that'll help out a little bit. But Tanner Houck might be gone by then. So, all right, guys, that's the end of the show. I am Will Power, and for John and Javi, we'll see you guys next week. Oh, by the way, I will not be here next week. I will be in Puerto Rico. So Carlos will be actually hosting the show next week with Javi, and John, you are more than welcome to go ahead and come on the show with them. I will make sure that I give Carlos all your information so he can send you the invite. And all right, that was it. Go to rivalfantasy.com, place your bets, scan that QR code in the top right corner, follow us everywhere. See ya.